So, as I was saying, this is Author Talk. I'm your host, M.L.Ruscsak, and you are J.M.Kelly, correct?
That's correct.
And you are an author of children's books, if I look at the correct bio.
Well, they're a little older than children.
Okay.
Children tend to be on the younger side, but my series actually is for upper middle grade students to young adults to older adults.
Awesome. Like I said, I have a mixture because I have so many authors, and we all use abbreviations, it seems, for our names. So I'm like, I'm hoping I'm looking at the right bio today.
You're looking at the right guy, yes, that's it.
Okay. So what led you into writing your books?
Well, I've always enjoyed the process of writing. I've always been a voracious reader and spent my youth going to Saturday matinees, mostly horror films and science fiction. And I grew up reading classics by Jules Verne and modern classics by Stephen King and the like. And I've always had sort of an itch to jump into that genre and see what I could do for myself. So that once I was in my former life a school principal, and when I left that field, when I retired, I took up writing and had some good success with it.
No, there you go. We all have to have our hobbies after retirement, right?
Yeah, it started out as such and quickly grew into a deep passion and excitement for doing so. And I had a lot to learn, I can tell you that, right from the very beginning.
Oh, yeah, it's not just sit down and write a book right offhand. There's about 20,000 things you have to learn to be an author.
Yeah, and a lot of it is flexible, which I came to find out. There's so many writers and so many different approaches to writing, and everyone, I guess, has their favorite. And I started out with my first book in the series of sitting there and trying to do a storyboard of sorts and kind of map it out and see where the story would go and introduce new characters and the new plot lines and so forth. And I just got so wrapped up in that process as opposed to the story itself that I just gave it up. And I did exactly what you said a moment ago, which is I just started writing and let it take me where the characters wanted to go. And before I knew it, half the story was written.
Right. There's two types of authors. There's the methodical, plan and research everything, and there's the pantsers, which just write. There's no right or wrong.
And I found that latter approach to be successful for me. And you're right, there's no right or wrong, and I would encourage anyone who cares to write to do what's best for them.
Right. I always tell new authors, just sit and write first. You're going to learn if you need to plan and do a storyboard and go the James Patterson way of having note cards and post-it notes, or if you can just write it from the top of your head. There's no right or wrong. It's whatever feels great for you.
Yeah, and that's good advice. I know for me, I'm one of those, I had to sit down and just start writing, and it all started to pour out. And in the very beginning, I read a Stephen King book, which is On Writing, is what it's entitled. And one of his bits of advice is you have to allow the characters to take you where they want to go. And I thought that was insane when I started writing, because you're the one that creates the characters, aren't you? The one that puts the words in their mouth, and you decide where they want to go.
See, I was just talking to an author the other day about this. We might come up with the characters, but it's the character that tells us what they're going to do.
It's very true. There were several times in both novels that I have in this series where I thought it was going in one direction, and the way a character was behaving and speaking, it really was going in another direction.
Correct.
and I just had to follow it.
Yeah, it's completely insane for anyone who's not an author to go through this process, because you're going to go, well, you wrote the character, you just make the characters do what you want. No, it doesn't work that way.
No, it does not. It's like puppets without a string.
Yeah. We make the strings at first, and somewhere along the line, the marionette gets cut.
That they do.
So we have how many books in the series right now?
Right now there are 2. The first one is called The Lost Treasure. That was my debut thriller, and that was about 4 young adolescents who come together to solve a deadly mystery. In that book, the spirit of a long-dead pirate is seeking his 300-year-old buried treasure through the possessed body of a diabolical descendant, and he rushes into conflict with the hero of the story, 11-year-old Bobby Holmes from England, his American cousin, Brenda Watson, and their friends, a real wise guy named Stevie, and a newcomer named Michael, who wrestles with Asperger's syndrome.
Okay.
They confront this spirit who attacks Brenda's father. There's a mysterious murder in the town. The tension heightens, and they get a warning from a character by the name of Madame Tarot, who was, who was a fortune teller, and along with Bobby's constant visions of a disturbing future, they are propelled into investigating the strange goings-on of the bucolic town of Mountain Lake, Connecticut. But that's the first novel. The second novel, which led to my being published by top publications, is entitled Monster on the Moors, and that one takes place, as the title would imply, in the North York Moors of England.
Now, when you're writing, you have a character, you said, that struggles with Asperger's. Was it hard to write that character, or did you do a lot of research for that?
That was a bit of a struggle, but I relied on past experience. As a former school principal, I came across a number of students who struggled with that issue. And
my daughter has Asperger's, so
yeah.
you touched something.
Yeah, you might enjoy the book. Michael, the character, is wrestling with this, and the others are wrestling with his acceptance into their group. And he turns out to be quite a forceful figure in the story, and it would not be overstating it to say that he's the hero of the first novel.
Very interesting. I would definitely have to get my daughter to read it.
And I think I successfully captured both the character himself and his mother, which I think is a side issue. How does his mother deal with trying to teach him things so that he can negotiate the world around him?
I think as a parent with a child with autism anywhere on that spectrum, it's a day-to-day battle, and every day.
Indeed.
Yeah, it's completely different day to day, because each day you don't know what side of the spectrum you're actually dealing with. And when I say spectrum, every child has a good day or bad day, and it's one extreme or the other.
That's true. And he also figures prominently in the second novel, Monster on the Moors, which I enjoyed thoroughly. That's sort of based on some Sherlock Holmes novels of the past, Hound of the Baskervilles, Bram Stoker's Dracula, the town of Whitby, which is in the North York Moors, is the town that through which Dracula enters the country. So it's kind of an eerie spot. And the landscape is very beautifully strange. So it was really a great spot for this novel.
These both sound wonderful. Now you have a couple other books out there as well.
I do. When I first retired from education, I wrote a book on leadership, and that's nonfiction, obviously.
Right.
And had a great experience with that, meeting one of the preeminent educators of our time who started the Harvard Principal Center, and I got to be on his personal sailboat with him sailing the coast of Maine. Ooh. And put together some life and leadership lessons based on that experience. Another book in my stable, I guess, is called Tommy Ailes, Good for What Ails You, and that's a comedic mystery with a wise guy attorney who gets himself involved with. He draws a short straw in a court case, and he has to defend the head of the Florida Mafia.
Oh,
and
wonderful.
He gets involved. Yes, he gets involved with him and a drug lord turned movie mogul and a bimbo accused of killing her husband, all to the backdrop of the Sarasota Film Festival. So it's there's a lot going on in that one, but that one is for adults.
Yeah, I'm laughing because the Sarasota Film Festival is an experience in and of itself, and then you're adding in this whole murder mystery mob thing, so it's kind of funny.
It is. In fact, I found myself, and I'm sure other authors find this as well, found myself laughing out loud as I was writing it. So I enjoyed it, the process myself.
Yeah, for adults, that's going to be a really fun one. Being in film a little bit, understanding the Sarasota Film Festival, that's probably one of the most comedic takes on this festival itself that I've ever heard.
Well, I think you'll enjoy the book if you pick that one up. I would like to give you a little information on Monster on the Moors, if I may. It's it was a very interesting book to write because I did rely on some British history, some factual history, but also on some British lore, which was interesting. Again, the same characters this time get together in England, and they're hunted by an ancient wolf creature, which is controlled by these evil witches of British lore, the witches of Westerdale. And when one of their friends is captured, they have to rely on the investigations of a librarian in town who is more than he seems, the mystical gifts of a gypsy king, and a mysterious stranger at the center of it all, and their own desperate race to save their friend and come out alive in the end, which is questionable. So it's an exciting story, and it's as I say, based on history in Great Britain, but also on British lore. These evil witches of Westerdale are part of the ancient stories of Britain. So it's kind of an interesting way to pull it all together and come up with an exciting thriller.
Awesome. You have a little bit of everything in your books. I mean, it's not one specific thing. It's it's a mashup. It's not a genre mashup. It's just a mashup, but a bunch of interesting things between places, historical. Yeah.
I would agree. But it was fun doing so, and again, the characters led me to that spot. And I'll give you an example quickly. In Monster on the Moors, in the very beginning, the lead character is traveling in a tunnel underneath the train station in York, and this character is sitting in the dark and grabs his leg and issues him a warning. Now, I know as an author, I have got to explain who this character is, but at that particular point in time, I had no idea, and no idea how I was going to explain him. He shows up again to issue another warning in the town of Whitby, and once again, I have no idea who he is or where he comes from and how I'm going to explain him to the reader, but I know I can't forget him because the reader won't accept that. They want to know. And about 2/3 of my way into the book, it all of a sudden became crystal clear. That's who he is. That's how he's explained, and he plays yet another pivotal role in the storyline. And it was just interesting how that all came about. And I just trusted in the characters to let me know when this was going to come about.
Oh, of course. You can't just write the book and plan it out. You have to trust your characters to give you some help.
Yeah.
It doesn't work the other way. I'm sorry. Even the best laid plan needs to be modified on occasion.
Oh, for sure.
I mean, how many times do we talk to authors and go, well, we had this really great ending. We wrote it first, but then it didn't work when it got the book wrote.
No, I would imagine not. Especially if you just let loose and let the characters go. How do you know where they're going to wind up? You don't often.
Right. It's a challenge. I mean,
it is a challenge.
Yeah. It's, oh, goodness gracious. I'm trying to explain this to our readers without talking directly to the authors themselves. And it's extremely hard to do because unless you do this for a living or as a hobby, you're going to go, what are they talking about? But you have your character. Sometimes we write down, okay, they have blonde hair, blue eyes, they're so high, whatever. But then by the middle of the book, they decide, no, I want green eyes, or we want supernatural powers, and you have to make it work because that's what the character wants.
Right. That's very true. And it's a mystery as to the writer as much as it is to someone who doesn't write. But if you trust in that process, I can say, just based on having completed three novels, that it does work. It does happen.
Yes, it does. And it doesn't matter if you write 3 novels or 20. It happens, and it happens for a reason because you trust your characters to develop the story themselves. And it's exciting. Now, the worst thing is going back and editing everything you wrote.
That's often, yes, that's probably the most difficult part of the process because this is your baby. I mean, these are things that come out of your head and onto the paper, so to speak. And when it makes sense to cut, you need to cut, and you need to be forceful about it and honest about it. And it's also good to have professional help. That's another suggestion I would certainly make is every writer, I don't care if you're unpublished, published, self-published, or just sitting there writing for your own pleasure. Getting professional help pulls everything together. I've been so fortunate in having a terrific professional editor that was able to make me a better writer. And which is their goal, I think. Yes.
And the thing is, when someone's critiquing your work, don't take it as a attack on your baby. They're trying to make your baby the best it can be.
That's a good way to put it.
I sometimes critique other authors' work if it's before print. I'm not an editor, but I'll do a beta read to see, as a publisher, if it's something I want to publish, for one, and two, what needs to be done to make it a little bit better.
Right.
If you're asking someone to read your story as a beta, listen to the suggestions. You don't have to take them, but listen. They have good advice.
I agree. And you mentioned something there that's I think is key. Is you don't have to, and it would be foolish for you to do so, to make every single change an editor might suggest to you, especially if you think that there's a piece of the story, even if it's a turn of phrase that you think adds to the storyline, it's worth bringing up and discussing and keeping in some cases.
Right.
Yeah.
It's not just take your story to the editor, and the editor's going to take everything out that you wanted in. No, there's a give and take. You have to listen, but you have to decide as an author which direction you want to go.
That's correct. Yeah, and a good editor will allow you to do that.
Exactly. I mean, there's so much going on, and there's so many great editors out there. The ones that are not great are the ones that say, you have to do this or I'm not going to finish the work.
That's correct.
Yeah.
I've had a terrific editor that we went back and forth and back and forth and back and forth until we had a final polished product, and we were both very satisfied with it.
Right. Normal editing takes about 6 passes at least, and there's a lot of back and forth per chapter between author and editor.
Sure.
But we're almost out of time, so where can our readers find you?
Well, as the saying goes, in bookstores everywhere, wherever they sell books, it's obviously someone like me, a new author trying to make a dent in the field. Barnes and Noble's not going to stock my novels, but some of my readers have been able to get them. They order them through Barnes and Noble. So through Barnes and Noble, Amazon, you can go to your local bookstore. They can get it. Or just go to my website, which is www.J.M.Kellyauthor.com.
Oh, see, it's nice and simple. Now, are you also on Kobo, Kindle, all those good sites? I'm assuming.
So I've been told.
Okay. Well, see, I asked because there's some authors that just don't like one medium or the other. So I've learned to ask. And any chance of doing audiobooks in the future?
That's a good question, and I haven't really explored that. I've been so busy writing and trying to push. I was very fortunate to get a publisher last fall. Okay. He's a small publisher, not a big publishing house. So as you know, a lot of marketing, et cetera, falls on the shoulders of the author anyway.
Right.
So I've been trying to actually go out into schools, and I have a couple lined up for the spring, and just push the book as much as I possibly can.
Well, there you go. Well, now with your schools, are you also on Authors in the Classroom, which is through Skype?
I have not done that, so that's something I should explore, I guess.
Yes,
it's worth it.
It's worth it. It's free for authors. It's free for schools to get the author in. You're able to go to schools you otherwise wouldn't be able to travel to. Like, I've been to schools in Ireland. My books are now in a bookstore in Ireland.
Oh, that's fabulous.
Because of Authors in the Classroom.
Well, that is something I should explore then, because that's something I'd like to see.
Yes. See, I've done Taiwan, I've done Japan, Australia, New Zealand. When the schools go to their local bookstores, and they're normally smaller bookstores or ones that we don't have access to here in the U.S., the bookstores will then reach out to the author or the publisher to stock the books, because now you're having a school say, hey, we just talked to this author. We're going to have this author back. It would be nice if we're able to get their books.
Yeah, I have a school lined up for the spring where they purchased 45 copies of the book,
awesome,
Monster on the Moors, to read before I get there, so that they're very anxious to talk about the plot and character and setting and scenery and so forth, about the story. and they'd specifically like to reference characters and such plot points and so on.
Oh yeah.
Of the storyline. So I'm anxious to get there and do that.
That'll be such a fun experience, because talking to students that have read the book versus the ones that haven't read the book is a completely different experience.
I'm sure.
And I mean, each school is a little different, and the kids, how you approach each group of kids, it is a little bit different, but it's so fun to do it.
Well, I'm looking forward to that, and any other experiences that come my way. So, and I've certainly enjoyed this tonight. Oh
yeah, you should also look into your local bookstores to set up an author's night. Smaller bookstores that normally do this, where you can go in and read a chapter or two to the kids, and then they have a chance to order your book at the bookstore.
Fabulous.
Yeah, just
I look
a little
forward
something.
to that as well.
Yeah, just a little something for marketing. I give a little tips here and there.
And as an author, you know that's a large part of it.
It is. Marketing by yourself is a tedious task, and someone has to do it.
Yeah.
So, but as I said, we're about out of time. So it was so great to have you on the show today.
Well, thank you very much. I really appreciate the opportunity. It was fun for me. It's always enjoyable talking about stories, especially the ones I've written. And it was a good time writing them, and it's a good time speaking to you about it. So I do appreciate it, and thank you very much for the opportunity.
Of course. And before you go, is there a third book in the Lost Treasure Monster the Moor series?
A good question. I am currently engaged in writing that. It takes place in New Zealand, and it's tentatively titled The Son of the Devil.
Very interesting. Like I said,
and having a good time doing it too.
Yeah, trilogies are always fun, and we always welcome you back once you have that published. So.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
You're welcome. And for tonight, happy reading, everyone. And again, thank you for being on the show.
My pleasure. Bye-bye now.
Have a nice night.
Thanks. You too.